Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, Larimer County. Today is Monday, July 22nd, 2024. This is a morning work session. We will be looking at performance measures for various offices, departments, including County Attorney's Office, facilities, financial services, fleet services, human resources. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our IT services. My name is John Kafalis, Commissioner from District 1, joined by my colleagues, my Commissioner colleagues, Kristen Stevens from District 2, Jody Shattuck McNally from District 3, and of course, our wonderful County Manager, Lorenda Volker. At this time, I'll turn it over to you, Lorenda. I imagine you'll have some opening comments to kind of frame the discussion.
I will. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Yes.
We are here today to talk about our support services performance measures. And so I guess I would say, remember that these departments measure many more things than what you will see today. We've asked them to narrow down to just those things that sort of tell the story to the public about what each service does and how we know that they're operating effectively and doing their work. Julie Elser has taken over these presentations from our budget team. And so, Julie, I think you may have more remarks to get us started. There.
Thank you. I'm Julie Elser, Data Program Manager. I'm back again so soon. We are trying this year to have all the performance measures presented before budget season kicks off. So I'm back with support services, and I'll be back again in the next few weeks with our remaining 2 service areas. So today we have 6 departments from support services here to present. We have just under 90 minutes, so we'll try to aim for about 10 to 15 minutes each for each department. And we can get started with the County Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Julie.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Bill Rasu, Larimer County Attorney. David A. Rowe, Deputy County Attorney, is here too. So the 2 measures that the County Attorney's Office has are efficiency measures. And our first measure, which is reflected on the screen here, is it looks at the attorneys per capita compared to similarly populated counties. On the left side of the screen up there, you'll see the graph represents the number of attorneys per population. So on the left side of the screen, you'll see in the yellow bar, Arapahoe has 1 county attorney for every 26,000 people in Arapahoe County. The next is Boulder County. They have 1 attorney for every 16,000 people in their county. We're next in green. We have 1 county attorney for every 45,000 people in our county. And then last is Weld. I'm sorry, that's the 2022. So let me jump to the right there. We included the prior years this year, which is new for our slides, so I apologize. So Arapahoe's 1 attorney for every 26,000. Boulder went down a little bit to one attorney for every 14,000. We're at 1 attorney for every 41,000, and Weld is 1 attorney for every 36,000. Our figure from last year went down a little bit. We added a 9th attorney in 2023, which changed our ratio by that 4,000 that you'll see on the left. Last year, the board also asked about non-attorney staff. The graph on the left represents the number of attorneys per capita. On the right, we did calculate the number of non-attorney legal support staff that are in these comparable counties. So Arapahoe County, for example, they have 25 attorneys and 25 non-attorney legal support staff. In Boulder County, they have 24 attorneys and they have 10 non-attorney legal support staff. In Larimer, we have, actually it's about 7.5. We have 10 total non-attorney staff, and 7.5 of those 10 are legal support staff. And then in Weld County, they have 10 attorneys and 6 non-attorney legal support staff. So that's statistics that we can include moving forward. I know the board asked about that last year. Our next measure looks at the ratio of attorneys per full-time county employee, and again in comparison to these same counties. This one will show you going back to 2020 to give you a trajectory. And so for 2023, Arapahoe County, for every 104 full-time county employees in Arapahoe County, they have one county attorney. Boulder County, for every 96 of their county employees, they have one county attorney. In Larimer, we're at 229 full-time county employees for every one attorney that we have. And then Weld County is 173 for every one county attorney that they have. It's been relatively consistent, as you can see. The trend from year to year for all of the counties has been pretty standard. What I will say, it's important to note that different county attorneys' offices have a slightly different scope of legal service that they provide. We're most comparable, at least statistically, to Weld County. They, like us, use outside counsel for civil rights cases. Weld also uses outside counsel for their child protection cases. We handle those internally. They use outside counsel for appeals that come out of child protection cases. We handle those internally as well. And there are a couple of other categories. In comparison, Arapahoe County, they tend to handle virtually everything in-house. They have a large staff. They have quite a bit larger population as well. But that's important to see their ratio of having 50 legal staff. They handle everything, virtually everything except water law. Boulder County is somewhere in between us and Arapahoe. They handle their civil rights litigation. They handle their human services work like we do. But they farm out a few things, water law and things like that. So it's not necessarily exactly apples to apples, but it still gives you a sense of where we are efficiency-wise. So as I've mentioned in prior years, we really pride ourselves in operating efficiently, but not to the detriment of the services that we provide. We rely heavily on the expertise of our clients, all of the county departments. I think that's a byproduct of us having been a private law firm prior to 2009. The county really developed an ingrained expertise in all of the areas that they work in. And they really only use us for genuine legal services. We're not involved in policy making. We go to meetings if there's a need for us to go. And I think that we've continued to carry that forward. With that said, we have grown as we've needed to. We grew by one attorney last year. We're projected over the next 5 years, I would say, to grow by another attorney and likely another 1 or 2 legal support staff over the next 5 years or so. So that is my presentation on our 2 measures, and I can answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bill. Colleagues, an opportunity to offer any questions, comments, or observations. Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bill, for your presentation, and I appreciate that you operate efficiently. And I'll probably ask a question that I probably ask every year, but I think it's good for people to know that is, clearly you feel like this is the best way to do things, to not to have outside attorneys do civil rights work and stuff. Is there any kind of scenario where you would contemplate bringing that in-house? And do you feel like this is still the best model is kind of farming out some of that work that feels more special, like more specialty work?
That's a great question, and we do consider that each year. There may come a time where you reach a tipping point where the volume of a particular type of case will justify bringing someone into the county attorney's office who can handle that, who has that expertise in-house. We're not there yet. The civil rights cases they tend to be hot and cold. We can have a number of them pending at any given time, and then we can go a year or 2 years without any of them. And so if we get to a point, hopefully that will never happen, if we get to a point where we have a constant level of those cases, that would certainly justify bringing somebody in-house. And we also consider it wouldn't be just bringing attorney staff in, but it's the support staff that would come with them. We do find that a lot of the counties, even the Big Ten counties, tend to use outside counsel for really specialized work, water law, some environmental work. Usually those issues come up so infrequently that they don't justify having an expert in-house. But there are certain areas like the civil rights law where if you get the volume of cases consistently, then we would reach a tipping point at some point. So we're not there yet. We also monitor it in the workers' compensation cases. We use outside counsel for that. So we do look at those trends. Just recently, we were looking at them. There may come a time where the volume justifies handling those in-house, but we're not there yet, but we do watch it, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill and David, I appreciate you being here today, and it seems, when you look at these numbers, I appreciate you kind of giving that background, because when I first see that, I'm like, whoa, how are the employees doing? Because I'm sure that means there's a larger caseload, and so that's my first question. How do you all feel? I mean, you guys are a pretty tight-knit group. We've been invited over to some nice celebrations. How is that feeling for the employees with kind of the setup that you have? Because I know that's been a goal of yours, is try to address making sure retention and employee work-life balance is good.
Right. We do monitor that really closely. I'll say the area that we see the most pressure tends to be in the human services work. As those cases demand more attention, rightly so, the frequency of court appearances and things of that nature also increase. So we do watch that, and we've shifted we now have 4.5 of the 9 attorneys in our office do the human services work. So that additional help there has managed the hours. I think that our ability to be so efficient is largely driven by the longevity that we have in our office. We have a 25-year attorney. I've been there 22 years. We have a 17-year attorney. We have a 15-year attorney. We have an 11-year attorney. And so the people that have been here a long time, that experience allows them to be really efficient. So I think that's important, and it allows us to be efficient. So we do monitor that.
And my next question, if I might, Mr. Chair, we've had some pretty big land use items and 1041 items, and some of that is out of your control. And I know you said you rely heavily on staffing. Is that when those come through, and I'm sure they're still going to come through, does that take and drain a lot of energy away or staff capacity away? And how does that impact your office? I know that's part of your duties and stuff, but sometimes recently there was 3,800 documents. There's just a lot more involved. And how does something like that of that magnitude impact the office, or do you kind of plan for that kind of thing? Because we knew this was coming, so I'm just curious about that.
We do plan for that in some respects. They're not uncommon. The scope of them can be unusual from time to time, but the process that we follow tends to be the same regardless of whether it's a topic that has significant public interest or something that doesn't. So we have the process down pat. We do a lot of those cases, and so it doesn't have a significant impact on our workload. We're used to having a couple of those a year. The bigger ones do take more time, but not to the point that it impacts other work.
Well, I just want to say thank you to you all and your staff. I mean, you always seem to be there when we need assistance and ask questions. And certainly looking at those numbers, it shows you are really great stewards of taxpayer money by stretching out and being efficient. And I think your point, I was writing down all these attorneys, more than half your attorneys have lots of experience. And I think that also is very much a testament to how your office runs and the work environment. People are staying that long because people usually stay where they like to work. So I think that also just really is commend you all for running a really wonderfully good work environment to have those folks, because I think you can't buy experience. It's immeasurable, especially in these areas are so unique. So I just want to say thank you and appreciate explaining those numbers today.
Thank you.
So all of my questions have been answered proactively by your comments, Mr. County Attorney, as well as the questions offered by my colleagues. So I do not have any additional questions. Certainly wish to express our collective appreciation for all the good work and the efficiencies in making sure that your team, your staff is being taken care of. Before we move on to the next item, I wonder if our esteemed Deputy County Attorney would like to offer anything quickly. Any wisdom or any thoughts that may have been overlooked, sir?
I don't think anything's been overlooked. I will say that we try very hard to make sure that we have balanced out areas of expertise so that we have two or three people in those
That's a good
areas.
point.
So to the extent we get hit with some big areas in 1041 or 106, we have attorneys that can deal with that, but then we have others who have experience to back them up while they work on that. So it's pretty efficient in moving topics around our office.
Excellent. I think that's a really important point that you just made, David. Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to the next department.
Thank you.
You folks have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper, we're going to talk about buildings.
Very good. Good morning, Commissioners. Lorenda. Ken Cooper, part of the facilities team. We can wrap through these pretty quickly, I think. We did add a couple that we've been kind of tracking for a bit, and so we'll talk about those at the end. But in the upper left-hand corner, we actually went down in the overall cost per square foot over the year. That's good news, of course. I think part of that's a reflection in just the stabilization a little bit in the market. Construction is finally showing signs of not going straight up, and that really helps us. So it helps us a lot on the kind of the onesie-twosie kind of stuff that we tackle, and certainly, trying hard to be good stewards with the public dollar for all the, the contractual stuff that we handle as well. If you move down into at the lower left, that's the one that talks about the maintenance full-time equivalents per 100,000 square feet. I've mentioned this before, but the county does an excellent job of plugging in operational dollars anytime they bring new space on board. It's not where I have to go beg. Our team has to beg. It's very good process, and so there's good continuity to it. We do stay much lower than what the industry benchmark is, and that's primarily because we keep things pretty tight on the inside when it comes to in-house staff. And a lot of organizations that manage space like ours do an awful lot of it with in-house staff that we outsource. So we try to keep it much smaller on the in-house staff, and electricians and security work and things like that many organizations our size would tackle with in-house staff. We farm that out, and it works well in a lot of ways, and so that helps us obviously stay way low on that graph as well. In the upper right, percent of employees ranking facility services, this to me is our most important category. That's the survey that we do about every 15 months or so. And we went from a high water mark in 2022 of 97%. So again, that's a four-choice answer. It's poor, fair, good, or excellent. They have to rank our overall score. There's about 10 things that they give us grades on, and again, we send this to the entire organization. So you can't pick in the middle like so many would, right? It's not a 3. It has to be a 1 or a 2, which are less than stellar, or a 3 and a 4. And our goal is to have 90% answer at good or excellent. And so that's the upper right-hand corner there, that graph. Our goal is 90%. That 90% would say, yep, you did good or you did excellent overall, serving the customers. And we've maintained that number very well. 97 was a neat high, but this is just a hair less than that. And of that, about 60% rate us as excellent overall. So those are great. We do have a new, I'm not sure if you have submitted any requests through it, but we moved from WeServe as our platform. IT and facilities share that program. WeServe was replaced by Jira, JSM, and so that happened in the last roughly year and a half. And this it allows us to also have a little switch turned on that program where people can do a quick evaluation. If you come in and take care of a problem with a chair or take care of a problem, in the office area or whatever, they can quickly go in and give you a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars on the service. And to support the number that we have on our infrequent, again, roughly annually, we do these surveys. This thing is a constant deal. And for 2024, we've had, I think this is as of the middle of last week, we had 904 folks go in and review of probably 3,000 to 4,000. So, roughly a third or a quarter of people are doing this each time. And our scores are 4.9 out of 5 stars. So very, very good to see that. We appreciate IT picking a program that allows for that, that constant kind of immediate feedback that we get. And so that's a neat reinforcement to that piece as well. Bottom right, percent of preventive maintenance, that again is just the guidelines that we get from the manufacturers that tell us, this is twice annually. You got to do this, every month, filters on, HVAC equipment, things like that. And these are the numbers of, this is the percentage of pieces that we're completing within that required timeline that the manufacturer's guideline gives. Our goal is 90%. We've done a good job of staying ahead of that, each year over year. Again, we've got a good baseline now on a lot of these going back to 2018. I think when the county first implemented its measures, maybe 17 might have been. So I think we actually eliminated a year this year without getting too tight on the graph. The middle bottom, percent of buildings meeting energy consumption standards. So that's the EUI, right? Energy utilization intensity. Yes, Matt, close enough. It's something the state is now using, and you might remember that this came up in our discussion when we talked about the electrification discussion for our new what's going to be a new emergency services program, or I'm sorry, building. The state currently only follows or only requires buildings of 50,000 square feet or larger. So we've got we track 20 of those, and half of them that we track, and again, some of these buildings are quite old, blue spruce and so on, right? Half of those buildings are already performing at the state guidelines from 26 to 29, so we're doing very well. The county's done an excellent job of investing and continuing to stay current on a lot of its HVAC equipment. You've heard me share this many times, so we appreciate that support very much from a financial standpoint. But we currently have half of our buildings, in this category that would already make the mark from, going all the way out to 2029 for the state requirement. So that's good news. Our goal would be by the time we get to 2029 that 80% of those facilities would be in that ballpark. So that's a new measure. I don't know if there are questions on that. I think the state is going to transition from 50,000 square foot buildings down to maybe 20 or 15,000 square foot buildings at some point, but currently that's the expectation. And they actually will, they have a system set up where they'll actually come in the private sector, they can actually levy fines if folks don't get to this point by the time those measures are, required for 2026 to 2029. So the public organizations are still exempted from that, but that doesn't mean we don't want to track them and, certainly adhere to what we can to try to meet those standards. We've gotten good news on one of our newest buildings, the Loveland building. I think I had shared this with you too at some point in a previous work session, but that building was operating upwards of about 80 on the EUI scale when 60 is the required measure for a general office area like that. But we're now tapering back and we're down in like 65, so we're making some good progress. There was one outlier month that kind of caught us because of some things with I think with set points that were related to the HVAC system. So it sort of skewed our numbers for the next 12 or 13 months, and we're falling off of that now. So that's good news on that building specifically. And generally speaking, our buildings are really close to the EUI, in almost all cases. It's interesting to see how the state has categorized these things, because in some cases it feels like they've kind of given a free pass to certain industries. Nightclubs, are over 300, an office building is 60, and obviously the lower the number, it's like golf, better the score. And so it's tough to get to 60, and we're in the 58 to 62 range for most of our buildings that this building operates right at the number, pretty much. So good news there as well. The last measure there, the Green Biz Award, that was the one that we were tracking successfully for many years through the city of Fort Collins. That was their Climate-Wise program, right? The county had they had 6 categories, water usage, gas, electricity, et cetera. So some waste pieces in there as well. So really mostly specific to building use, right, or building efficiency. We were at the Platinum, which was the highest level for all those years, right up until they moved away from that program. They now have a program in place, the Green, NOCO Green Biz, right? That's their, kind of replaced Climate-Wise. And we've been tracking that for about a year. Close enough, Matt? We've been working with Heidi Pruis and Abby Stapleton, and I think the lion's share of the work on that program now went from being specific to buildings to more of a community focus, and so it became a little tougher. So we're graded as a silver, which is the middle of the 3. But our goal, and certainly our expectation, is that by having a little better information, again, this was an initial effort that the county made working with NOCO Biz, Green Biz. The initial award came in at silver. We expect that to get to gold. It isn't because our buildings are less efficient. It just means that the scores are quite different. And so the things that they target, the things that they track are a little more community driven. And so I think that is kind of the way I'd describe that. So, yeah. And if there are questions about any of those, or
Yeah, thank you very much, Ken. Mindful of the time and what Julie suggested as far as our timelines here, time frame. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments? Commissioner Shettup McNally.
Thank you. First, I just have to say, I say this all the time, but just walking through the buildings, they just look new. They look great. They always look well maintained, and so I think that's hard to measure. But I want to just say, I have said this all along. It's just amazing what you do, and I appreciate that. When you talk about using outsourcing external providers for specific services, there's been some supply chain issues and some work capacity issues. Have we run into any of those with those external providers, or are we on some fairly robust contracts that they're available when we need them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the short answer is yes, we absolutely have faced that, particularly on capital projects. That's really been a struggle. Things that used to have 12-week lead times, for a while post-COVID were 70 weeks. We had to actually buy our way down to like 58 weeks at one point, with some electrical support equipment for our new fleet campus. So I mean, really crazy type lead times, and it feels to me like it's still used as an excuse. Supply chain stuff is related back to COVID, but there has been some good news. I mentioned the overall operating costs that are down slightly, and so it doesn't hit us so much day to day, but there's certainly things. The good news is. We can plan out, if we're replacing a chunk of an elevator, a piece of the equipment and so on. I shouldn't bring up elevators, but, because that's not real fun. But rarely are they fun. But anyway, some of those things have significant lead times, but we can plan for it. It's much simpler than when you've got a 14-month calendar on a construction project, and you're targeting, the third interval to get through it, to have to meet something and have everything sequenced around that. So the impact is much steeper on those projects. But the short answer is yes, we've absolutely felt it. We've seen the costs go up, in many cases, but lead times are still, significantly higher than they would have been pre-COVID for sure. So
Thank you. I just want to say extraordinary work. Please express my gratitude to you, and please express my appreciation to your staff. Thank you.
It's very much a team effort. A lot of folks on our team. There's about 40 of us, but the county does an excellent job, funding these things. So the component replacement plan, I've shared the gratitude for that as well, that really does make a huge difference when we can, stay current with equipment and not have to, compete so significantly against other, priorities for the county when that's slotted like it is and there's a revenue source year over year. It makes a huge difference. So thank you for that.
Thank you, colleagues. Commissioner Stevens?
I'm good. I don't have any, and I know we're on a time crunch, so I appreciate the work, though, and I'm really glad we are paying attention to, we're including those operational costs, because I think that I've worked for big employers in town that have not done so well in that area, and it's quite clear that things always need to be fixed, whereas here I've never really had to ask for anything to be fixed. It just gets fixed,
Thank
or
you.
it already is fixed, so thank you.
Thanks.
So a quick comment, and I will offer one question. Hopefully there's a quick answer, but having served on the Capital Development Committee in the state legislature years ago, I think the state would learn a lot from the county, Larimer County, in terms of being proactive regarding, ongoing maintenance issues and not waiting until, deferred maintenance and things get worse. So well done there, and team effort, absolutely. My question is, and if it's too long to answer, perhaps offline, I'm curious regarding the, we're surveying our internal customers as far as the buildings. Is there a way to survey our external customers to see what they think of, how wonderful the buildings are, and is it meeting their needs?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Public Affairs has the, on larimer.org, there's a way for folks to give input on that. And I think in the annual survey, there's kind of a question or two that speak, in general about those things. We don't go and solicit, hey, what do you think, on building issues like that. But those are mechanisms that, that are out there. And we do get a fair share of questions and things that we need to follow up on larimer.org that are specific to our buildings, experiences that people had with, maybe an ADA issue or a question about landscaping or, things that they obviously notice when they, when they come and go through our buildings. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and especially in terms of accessibility issues, it would be important to know about that. And then, of course, kudos regarding how we're evolving with the landscaping of our buildings. I think that's,
Yeah.
frankly, I
Thank
think
you.
that's great.
Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Ken. Have a good day. Let's move on.
Thank you. We'll move on to finance.
Thanks, Ken. Good morning.
There it is. No, no, she didn't.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. The Finance Department has 4 measures. So starting on the left-hand side, the measure of did county financial statements receive a favorable audit opinion? So this measure is brought to us by the Accounting and Reporting Department, or Division of Finance, under the leadership of Lori Lopez. And as you can see, we have successfully completed this measure, and the 2023 audit will actually be brought to the board tomorrow as part of administrative matters. And this measure really matters to the county for 2 reasons. First, it shows our commitment to fiscal stewardship and transparency. And second, having a favorable audit opinion is necessary to receive grant funds and to also borrow funds for the county should that become necessary. And you may think from an external perspective, this may seem like an easy thing to do. It's like, just keep doing the same thing you do every year. But it's not easy because the rules keep changing and evolving, and they're additive. So, for example, 15 years ago, there were 57 sets of rules we had to follow, and now there's 102. So it just keeps getting more and more complex. The bar keeps raising. So that's a huge issue for Lori and her staff, and a major accomplishment for them. The two top measures relate to purchasing, and our purchasing division is under the leadership of Heather McMillan. The one estimated savings through the purchasing office is important because it shows the value of doing competitive purchasing rather than just buying from one vendor. And the difference you see there, the 8.1 million for 2023, is the difference between the high bid and the low bid for a given bid that the county has issued. So you can see there's a fair amount of savings there from doing this effort. And this will vary from year to year depending on the type of project that the county is involved in, and also depending on the number of vendors that are willing to bid on county projects. And, we've seen some tightening of that due to vendors having trouble with staffing, supply chain, all of those things that impacts that cost savings that we show. And then on the top right is the number of bids, quotes, and RFPs. And it's I think we're about 50 in 2023, which is a decrease from 2022. And the reason is that there was an increase in the purchasing thresholds that the board approved in April. And that meant that departments could do their own informal bids up to a higher level. And so that shifted some of the bids from purchasing over to the departments. So it's not necessarily that the county is bidding out less, it's just that it's different as to who's performing those bids. And this is an important measure because it shows the number of opportunities for vendors to provide goods and services to the county and to get involved and that sort of thing.
Carol, colleagues, before you move on to the next slide, for the sake of the public, would you quickly explain the difference between bids, quotes, and RFPs?
Oh, good question. So RFPs are when the county knows what they want, but doesn't really know how to get there. Like, we would like our buildings to be ADA compliant, but we don't really know the detail of how you get there. And so the proposals will come in and say, well, we could do a study of your buildings, or we could bring in an engineer to look at all of your doors or something, so the vendor comes with a solution. Whereas with bids and quotes, we know exactly what we want. And then the vendor just has to come with their version of that product or service. We want this wall painted. Okay, what's the cost for that? So bids and quotes are much simpler. Bids are usually higher value projects and quotes are smaller value projects.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Our last measure on the bottom relates to our risk management program, which is under the leadership of Jeff Green. And that has to do with workers' comp cost savings compared to other similar entities. The county is responsible, of course, to take care of employees that are injured on the job. And this median line would be if we were average with all other cities and counties. If we're above the line, which we are, that means we have a cost savings. If we're below the line, that means we're spending more than average. And there's a number of things that help with that. One is preventing accidents and injuries in the first place. That's the absolutely most cost-effective way of saving money, is not getting involved in that. And the county does a lot of programs as far as training employees. A lot of our departments do an excellent job in providing ongoing training and reminders to employees about safety, and that really helps us. We're also impacted by the fact that we are self-insured for workers' comp, if we went and bought insurance for workers' comp, it would be a lot more expensive. And then the third element that keeps our costs a little bit lower than others is that we do a pretty darn good job of managing our workers' comp cases, of making sure that people can get back to work, maybe not their full job right away, but modified duty, so that we can get them back into the workforce. So those are finances measures. What questions can I answer for you?
Thanks again, Carol. Colleagues, do you have any questions, comments, observations? Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Just first, let me just say, Carol, thank you for all that you do. You do, and your team do an outstanding job, and I just want to thank you and commend you for your above and beyond service on the Regional Opioid Abatement Council. You have been, along with David A. Rowe, just instrumental in the success of that Regional Abatement Council. I know you go those extra meetings with me so we can stay ahead of what all the new things are changing, but you really have provided some great input. I just want to say thanks. My question is, we've gotten these favorable audit opinions. So a couple of questions. Is 41 years now, or 40, going on 40? Or is that a different measure?
It's a little bit different.
Okay.
There are two things we want to achieve. The first is this audit, favorable audit opinion, and the county has received that for many years, and I'm not sure how far back that goes. The second is there's a organization called the Government Finance Officers that will review your ACFR, your financial statements, and they also issue an opinion or an award, and we've received that for about 40 years.
Great.
So that's like a step beyond this.
So if I might, Mr. Chair, and maybe Carol, if this is a complicated answer, you can maybe answer it to me later offline, but I've been learning a little bit more about audits lately, and I'm curious about the depth and breadth of these audits that are on here. They're more, they're pretty robust, if my understanding that what the county does, correct? We're not just kind of a very high level, not extensive. These are really robust audits. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, they are pretty involved. It looks at the county's financial statements to see whether or not they're fairly presented, but it also looks at our internal controls to make sure that our cash handling and those sorts of things are also up to snuff, I guess. And the auditors will be here tomorrow, and you can ask them more questions at that point, too.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Stevens, any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, just real briefly, when we look for, with the bids and the quotes and the RFPs, do we have any policy, can you remind me if there's a policy where we look at veteran-owned businesses or women-owned businesses? Is any of that included in some of the quotes that we're looking for? Or is there a point system that
A lot of
supports those businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's certainly something we think about quite a bit. A lot of our bids and RFPs involve federal funds, and federal funds do not allow you to give extra points to veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. It's not allowed. So we haven't gone that route. But what we have done on RFPs is and this is new, we've just started this year, we've come up with a list of questions that are sustainability related. Like we can ask about green practices, we can ask about diversity. And we've given our departments the choice of adding those questions into the RFPs. And about 80% have gone ahead and done that. So we're just kind of walking into that arena of not just looking at price and service, but looking at some of these other factors when we select our vendors.
So would we still not be allowed to do that when it's federal funds, but we could do that when it's our own general funds? Or we can ask those questions?
We can ask the questions, but we can't assign like additional points.
All right, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Well, I'm glad we're doing that. I think Heidi had mentioned that in one of her presentations that we were doing that. I think that's great, and I really applaud the departments that are doing that, so thank you.
So I'll just close us out by, again, saying thank you to you and your Lori Lopez and your team. I think it's very important that we sort of walk the talk to be good fiscal stewards of the people's treasure. So I just think that's really good. And actually, frankly, I express appreciation to you, Carol, as the director. I'm always impressed by, obviously you have a tremendous amount of knowledge, experience, expertise. Somehow you're able to translate that in a way that regular folks can understand some of these things. And the way you speak and deliver your message is measured and thoughtful, and that's actually really good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Carol, can I add a little thank you? So you,
I'm
Heather.
sorry.
Heather McMillan, and we have too many Heathers, and the IT team worked together to create the quote quester, which is now available on our website, which is one of the things we were waiting for before those thresholds changed with regard to who did the bids and quotes. And so vendors can go online and they can see what's available if they want to work with the county. It's more friendly for small vendors. It's really a creative thing that they developed for us based on our needs. And so I want to give a shout out to you and to Heather and the IT team for making that happen, because I think that will make a difference in the long run. And it certainly provides a structure for departments to get their quotes in a more formal way. And so you all can see that documentation as well. Well done.
Yeah, that was a great project.
Excellent.
For both Heather and IT.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Lorinda. I'll try to do a little bit better job remembering to ask if you have any additional insights.
Okay, up next is fleet.
Woohoo, big trucks and things.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Heidi Vilhauer, Director of Fleet Services. So just to start, we have approximately 1,200 units with Larimer County. 1,025 of those are active units on the road, driving or operating. 125 units are typically on order at any time, and about 25 are in the disposal queue, either waiting to be disposed of or at the auction waiting for proceeds. So all in all, we have 1,025 active units. The replacement cost of those units is around $82 million, so we have a very large fleet. So the measurements here are the utilization. We'll first talk about the hours and the mileage. So there has been an increase in mileage and hours, a fairly significant increase. And that really is attributed to just the growth that we've had here at the county. So really every year we have acquired between 10 and 15 new units for the fleet. And obviously that's contributing to those. And then in addition, there's some things that we're changing up maintenance on. So we're calculating in hours rather than miles. Like the K9 units, for example, they're not really driving, they drive, but really they sit and idle a lot. So they do need to be measured on hours rather than miles. We have a big vac truck that's very similar. It's a very large piece of equipment used to clean culverts and clean different things. It's best that that's on an hour meter as well. So that's the main increase in hours that you're seeing there. The other thing is that the increase in hours and miles is reflective of our preventative maintenance program. We're able to keep things on the road, as thoroughly as we can. They're not sitting in the shop. They're not waiting for repairs. They're getting repaired quickly and back out on the road. So that's great. Of the 5.5 miles, 190 of them, 190,000 miles were alternative fuel. And that's about 3.5%. So definitely room to keep on improving that number. The next measurement is work orders. So the thing that we measure is preventative maintenance, because with preventative maintenance, we reduce downtime, we reduce expensive repairs, and we extend the life of that unit, which are all cost reductions. So over year, we started out with fairly low on preventative maintenance. But in 2021, we had 28% of our maintenance is preventative maintenance. And then it continues to increase steadily. In 2022, we're at 31% of preventative maintenance. At 2023, we're at 36% preventative maintenance. So I think that's really telling us a good story of we're paying attention to it, we're putting program in place so we can monitor that equipment and keep it coming into the shop. So we can grease it, just do everything that doesn't get done in the field. And so that's starting to pay off. And the other measurement is for
Heidi,
fuel.
can I interrupt you for a
Yes.
second? Because I think that's an important measure. Changing the culture around bringing equipment in for preventative maintenance has been a really big effort that Heidi has put in over the past 3 years. Even during COVID, that was a big push. But I think you're seeing now the results of that, which is if you maintain a vehicle, if you bring it in before it breaks, if you can keep everything in good operating order, it stays up and operating more, which you're seeing in terms of hours and miles. So the whole system plays into bringing things in before there's a problem. We know there are some things you can't prevent, but big kudos to Heidi, because this was a really big culture shift across the organization to get folks in with their vehicles and equipment for preventative work instead of just repairs.
Yep, thank you, Lorinda. So then, moving on to the fuel component. So here at the county, we have distributed 780,000 gallons of fuel, totaling $2.8 million. 110 gallons are charged out to other agencies, which is about 14% of our overall fuel, our annual fuel. So that's good, and I'd like to see that continue to increase, those partnerships with other agencies. If we have the infrastructure and we have agencies that can come in and utilize that infrastructure and help us to keep it current, the fuel sites are, there's technology behind them and hardware behind them. So just like Ken said, it's important that we keep things current and well-maintained. And so the more gallons that we can pump out of those tanks, the more money we'll get back to keep the sites current. 75% of our fuel sales are done through internal fuel sites. We have 13 fuel sites here at the county that we manage and maintain. And then as far as the CO2, the greenhouse gas calculation, you'll see that there was, that's at 6,295. I think it's very related to the fuel. So if you see that fuel is also similar there, because we have had increase in hours and miles as well, and been able to keep that CO2 emissions, fairly flat. And those are the metrics. So just wanted to, anyone have questions?
Oh, thank you, Heidi. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. First, kudos and well done with pushing the preventative maintenance. Besides helping with costs, having some of these vehicles maintained and tuned up, would that also help with the emissions and making them more fuel efficient as well? So in a lot of ways, that program is kind of helps on a lot of different fronts. Would that be an accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. Especially the heavy equipment, very emissions intensive there. And that brings on a lot of maintenance issues as well. So the healthier we can keep our equipment from that perspective, the more uptime it will have.
And my second question, and again, just wonderful job. I think these are the things that we don't realize make such a huge difference for the county. We talked a lot about heavy equipment, and I learned a lot about, during the Opioid Abatement Council, how much a sheriff's vehicle, it's not you just buy it off the the assembly line has all these things you have to add, and I was surprised how much the sheriff's deputy's card costs. So, knowing those are around $100,000 just for a sheriff's deputy, how many, I mean, maybe at this top of your head, but if you don't know this, maybe you can get back to me. I run into a fire truck over the weekend, brand new, that was $500,000. So I'm just curious, how much equipment do we have over $500,000? I mean, because those are especially probably extra challenging to maintain, and really with that amount of money, having to keep them very well fine-tuned. We have a lot of those pieces of equipment. I'm assuming we do. When you talked about the suction truck or whatever you call it.
The vac truck, yeah.
I'm sure that's very pricey, so.
I would say we maybe have around 10 units, over 500,000. The landfill especially, those compactors are heavy. They have some unique equipment for trash diversion, like the shredder. That's a fairly expensive piece, the vac unit. So yes, we do have several expensive units. And then in addition, the unique units, like the sheriff's office with their communication van or their bomb squad van, that are very unique. You don't just go out and buy that. You really have to work together to build an ideal piece of equipment.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. I want to add my kudos because I think you've done a lot to really modernize how we run the fleet department. So that's great, and I love to see, emissions numbers flattening, and the fact that we're trying to get more alternative fuel vehicles in our fleet. With the 125 units on order, are any of those like electric vehicles, or are any of them hybrid? How are we trying to bring those kind of vehicles into our program?
Yep. Some of them are hybrids, and then again, because we're just on the cusp of getting the charging stations, those will start. Electric vehicles will start to become on order. We're not seeing delay times that we used to see, so we're being mindful of that as we're ordering the 2025, 2026 units. But we do expect to start bringing the electric vehicles into the fleet slowly, but bringing them in for sure.
Thank you. And that would have been my second question, was are you seeing those supply chain kind of delays that we've seen, but things are starting to ramp back up. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
The ones
good.
you don't really want to see, you think, well, these might take, 12 months, let's order them. Then in 3 months, they show up.
Oh, okay.
So some of that's the uncertainty, but
Right.
all in all, it's definitely starting to narrow.
Well, great. Thank you for your work on this. And this is a really important piece of lowering our greenhouse gas emissions. So I appreciate your work in that space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Miranda, is there anything you'd like to add? Just from my point of view, just thank you for all the hard work, and I'm sure you'll be happy when we're in the new location.
Very happy, yes. Yes.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day, Heidi. We can move along there, Julie.
Yeah, we'll move on to human resources.
I believe you mean human resources? Or is that what you said? Yeah, it helps if you talk into the mic. Otherwise, I miss half of what folks have to say. Sorry about that.
Good morning.
Morning.
You're almost done. Just 2 departments left. Our metrics this year are reasonably consistent. Again, I'm Bridget Paris. I'm the HR director. And with me is Nick Cole. He's our accounting manager. And Nick's actually going to go through our metrics for us. And I'm going to hang out and answer any questions that might come up in addition to what he's able to share.
Good morning. Our first measure here is the countywide overtime as a percent of total earnings. In 2023, there wasn't much change from 2022, but 2023 was 3%, or total overtime wages was about 4.5 million issued to employees.
So why is that important? The overtime?
Handoff.
I'll hand that one to you.
So I think what's important to keep in mind is if we're paying overtime, typically that trends from some sort of absence of staff that needs to be covered, or some sort of increase in service. A wildfire would be example of a required increase in service where we might see some additional overtime. So depending on the department and depending on the event or the activities, that's typically where we see overtime. For departments that are covering for an absence of staff, we like to have discussions about workload, FTE allocation, and we can support departments in those discussions. You know, we offer great benefits here at the county, including holidays and time off, and that reduces the amount of time that we typically see employees working. So when you think of a full FTE, that's, 2,080 hours. Now you take away any of what we call non-productive hours, which would be our holidays and vacation time or sick leave, time off that the employee takes. We see about somewhere between 75 and 80% productivity, right? So we know that they're taking about 20% of leave. So employees tend to work, if they are using their benefits and taking holidays, which most of them do, between about 1,600 and 1,700 hours, as opposed to the 2,080. So when we're thinking about allocating resources to our services and making sure we have enough staff to deliver our services, we like departments to look at that productivity rate and understand, I can't staff it at 2,080, that's not reasonable. So do I have enough staff to deliver the hours of service necessary?
So we would never want this to be zero, right? Because overtime is not a bad thing, but I like this measure because if we see this number go up, we wonder, do we have a lot of vacancies in a department? Do we have no vacancies and too much work for that department? It's sort of a good measure to have conversation around what's going on with that workforce in that particular department or office. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's a great answer. The second measure we have is the average time from job posting opening to offer. In 2022, we had 42 days average time, and then in 2023, we had an increase to 49. This is representative of a timing issue of when the job is posted to the time that it's filled, but the increase is related to availability by the hiring manager. So if it's not accounted for in their schedule, it will increase the time that it's closed. And then we have increase of healthcare costs year over year. We've been really fortunate with some of our great programs to keep our costs pretty low. In 2022, we did put in an increase of 3%, and then in 2023, we had 0. And that was just to get us a little bit ahead of the game with the claims that are increasing year over year. We have great programs like Second MD, which is through Grand Rounds. I can't remember the name. Maybe it is just Second MD, which is like a second opinion medical service. So when you get a diagnosis, you can take that to another facility and they'll have doctors review it, and that'll help give employees the information they need to make decisions about their healthcare and help drive those costs down through our plan. And then we also have Healthcare Blue Book, which is very similar. You can, look at a knee replacement and see if it's cheaper here or in Denver, and keep those costs to our plan lower.
Yep, we worked really hard, and that's one of our initiatives ongoing, is to help employees understand what benefits are available to them. We have so many, it gets really hard to keep up on, and health insurance is hard. We run right now just for medical about $32 million a year, so it's a large amount of money that we contribute towards the health and well-being of our employees. We've made several adjustments to the clinic this year, including an addition of a health coach. That was our most recent addition. That health coach will partner with the behavioral health, the clinicians, if necessary, the physical therapist also, and work with employees on strategies to address ongoing health issues, any plans that they have. So we're super excited about that, having a health coach available to employees to help them align and meet their goals. We continue to see local healthcare costs increase significantly. We are in more of a monopoly here, so that is what we'd call a threat to our plan and ongoing costs. We put in we call it our free cancer program, where we work with Banner and MD Anderson so that employees can get a bundled approach to cancer care. There's a lot that happens when you're dealing with cancer, and we want to take as much stress and make it the easiest, most reasonable process for an employee to get cancer treatment, and we've done that. It's really been a great experience. I know several of our staff have gone on tours at MD Anderson, met with clinicians, gotten the experience, and actually met with the staff that employees would be able to interact with. So continuing to make strides in the benefits area, it takes some creativity. We are dedicating some additional resources, to another half FTE or so, to health promotion and outreach. That's where we have a dedicated person look specifically at our department indicators specific to employees' health and create programming around wellness and prevention and strategies in departments. So hopefully we can continue keeping those premium adjustments low and keeping that good spread between what the employee pays versus what the employer pays. As an employer, we pay more than our peers in terms of that premium split than what employees pay. And I enjoy being able to support employees to keep their portion of costs down, and we're able to do that with our medical.
I think it's a great motivator that in our wellness program, we have that point system, and that if you achieve 1,000 points, it can result in a somewhat significant reduction in the employee share of the insurance premiums in the subsequent calendar year. I think that motivates me a lot to get my 1,000 points.
Yeah, I get my spouse motivated also because I get $40 more a month for him too.
No, that's
So
right.
there's a little
So-
motivation at our house.
Yes. Thank you. Please proceed, Nick.
And on that note, I did notice that you went ahead of me in the points this year, so I'm coming after you.
Walking.
Yeah.
The steps.
It's getting quite heated.
And then our last measure is the employee survey, indicating where Larimer County is a great place to work. No real change here. Year over year, it's pretty consistent. I think we dropped from 97 to 96 on the yes rating, and then the neutral went from, it might be 86, sorry about that. It's 87 to 86, and then the neutral score went up 1. We use neutral as a positive here, but I think this is indicative of employees' feelings about working here. We all enjoy it here, so, especially when we have great step challenges, so.
And you all added neutral when we see it show up in 2019. It wasn't an option before 2019, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions, comments? Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah, thank you for presenting these metrics. With the average time from job posting opening to offer, you said that the changes were sometimes or largely due to the availability of the hiring manager. Is there anything else that influences that number? I mean, are we finding it any easier to hire people, or are some positions still difficult to hire for?
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up. Unemployment is relatively low right now, which means we're looking for people with skills that may likely already be employed. And so someone would have to want to leave their employment. So that can also extend some of those periods. They, may be giving extra time from their existing employer. They may be relocating. We are seeing a handful of positions that remain difficult to fill, where we're just not getting the candidates that we like. And, we do a couple things when we come back to the drawing board on that, and that may be rewrite the posting. right? Try and get your attraction at a different level. Make sure that the words you're using in the posting are capturing as wide of a net as we could. Reevaluate those minimum qualifications. Are they truly minimum? Did we get caught in the trap of, is it something we'd prefer to have or like to have versus what's minimally necessary to do the job? And so if we get in a situation where we're struggling, we come back to that drawing board and relook at all the pieces around the job and the posting to make that happen. So sometimes, a week, that's easily scheduling, right? If you've ever tried to schedule a team of a panel interview, depending on the positions you're working on, if we've got a lot of projects or a lot of workload going, it gets pretty difficult to get all those people together to make that happen.
And are we still seeing the same areas where we're still maybe struggling, like people with a CDL?
I'd say yes.
For roads and bridges and maybe jail deputies and things like
Yep,
that? Okay.
pretty consistent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Sheddock, McNally, anything? Okay. Brenda,
Great.
well done.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
I presume you'll be walking up to the, whatever floor you
He's
folks.
going to take a couple extra stairs back and forth to help with the steps.
Mr. Baffinger.
Good morning. Mark Pfaffinger, Sports Services Director and CIO for Larimer County. So it's fun to hear all of my team behind me doing great work. I'm just going to give you a little update on IT and also try to use this opportunity to get some ideas on how we can improve our measures. So some of these measures have stagnated a bit and we're looking to refresh them. The cybersecurity rating was based on a company that we were using that did sort of like a credit score. And they've been providing us some high-level reviews, and we've actually stopped using the service because we were finding it wasn't really providing as much value as we had hoped last year. So they did give us a complimentary rating, but coincidentally, it was the same as the year before. So I'm a little questioning how much value there was in that complimentary rating we got. So in the area of cyber, as you know, there's a lot going on. A lot of the data can be a little scary. This was kind of a nice way to show that we were working and being proactive about cyber. So I'll just table that for a second, and we'll move on to the business downtime due to infrastructure failures. We did see a bit of an uptick last year. One thing we're seeing in our computer technology space is we're using a lot more outside vendors for systems. This is a trend that's happening in the IT space. We're leveraging cloud services more. We're leveraging third-party vendors such as Zoom as our phone. There's no infrastructure really in the county other than if you have a physical phone at your desk, all the technology is actually being delivered through an internet cloud provider that isn't in my data center anymore. So I only have limited control over the connectivity to that vendor. If they make a mistake, we go down. So it's obviously in their best interest to keep their services up, but we did experience, an hour downtime in a Zoom phone system last year as an example that impacted everybody. We also are starting to see, during COVID, we had to delay our network replacement for a couple of years to focus on other things. We are starting to see some cracks in the infrastructure a little bit where our wireless infrastructure was showing some signs of aging and causing some outages in a couple of our locations. So that impacted our scores. The good news is we are working on those. They are on our replacement schedule. We're funded through the awesome county replacement program that we've already talked about, where we don't have to go and plan 2 years out. We actually know that we have the funding to maintain our core infrastructure. So those systems are being refreshed this year, and we expect that to also contribute to another reduction in our uptime or improvement in our uptime. I think we all sort of have this general instinct about how things were. I know we could talk a little bit about, if related, we have a cyber vendor that's one of our partners called CloudStrike. And you've probably heard of them in the news over the last few days. So that's an example of where we're so integrated with our partner IT organizations, such as CrowdStrike being a partner company. I hasten to throw them under the bus because they've been a really good partner up until this mistake they made. Their technology has really been very valuable to us. They've detected security issues and incidents that faster than other systems would have detected. But even they have issues with their teams and making mistakes. So our team was alerted of that particular outage before in the middle of the night, which was, I'll say, good and bad, right? I mean, the good part was we knew about it before anybody was working, and we were able to get on it at 1 a.m. and have guys work through the night to fix servers, so most of our county business operations didn't experience any impact. By 8 o'clock in the morning, I think we had 99% of our servers up and running, and we just had maybe 5% of our workstations that had issues with the patch that came out. So that's an example of that, of how we're tightly integrated both internally and externally with our vendor partners. So we do what we can to keep our infrastructure up. But it will be interesting to watch these numbers change over the next few years as we move more and more of our services to cloud infrastructure providers. As an example, we're actually moving a lot of our Oracle database technology to the Oracle data center in Colorado Springs, instead of having it sit here in our office, mostly because they provide a better service, better overall maintenance of the systems, and and we can focus more on the business software side and the value to our customers instead of tinkering with hardware, which sounds fun, but really we want to provide high value work. Then the last measure is around our website, how many unique visitors, so how many people actually come who are unique, connections to the site to look for data on specific pages. So as you would have expected, we saw a major uptick during COVID. People were very excited to look at our dashboards and get information on COVID response and health data and things like that. So as expected, we saw quite a bit of a trend down after COVID eased in 2022, but we are seeing a next uptick as more and more of our services are provided on the web. So we rely very much on providing information through our digital website, through the automations that we provide. So it is nice to see, even though we saw a dip in COVID, we're also seeing now an uptick that seems more normal to our previous trend of a lot of people using our websites to get services from Larimer County, which it's good. It's things that we can do after hours, things we don't need to have staff on hand to provide, and it is a great source of providing information and knowledge back to our residents on all of the services we provide, which are extensive, over 20-some departments with unique services. So on that note, I don't have a lot of measures in terms of internal quality. I know you heard from Fleet. There's some measures on customer satisfaction. There's information on our cyber protection. I think that's an area that we could probably provide an improved view of the county's infrastructure. Are there things that come out from the commissioner side that jump out that might be interesting, or for Lorenda that you think in terms of how you look at or how you rate IT services that you might like to see a better view of information on?
Thank you, Mark. Colleagues, any thoughts on the question on the table? Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah, so, clearly, obviously, however we need to get the cybersecurity rating kind of situation, would be good, because it is really interesting that the numbers stayed the same over 3. So I don't know if that's indicative of that we're maintaining, or that company got lazy. I don't know. So however we need to measure that, or if there's a better company that we can use, that would be interesting to me. And then I guess, we've had a conversation about AI, and so, maybe around AI usage and what that looks like, and is that saving us time or dollars or staff, or, so I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think it might be, I would be curious to to have an update on some of that.
I appreciate that. We have been tracking through our Zscaler tool, which tracks our internet traffic, how many people are leveraging some AI cloud platform tools, how often they go there. And we might be able to pull some of those metrics to show the trend in AI adoption and maybe even what companies are the highest leverage tools. A lot of the grammar type companies are used quite a bit to rewrite. Apparently we're using a lot of tools to rewrite our language, our written documents to the proper grade levels. That's been interesting to watch. We're seeing a major uptick in some of our departments on that, as an example. And obviously OpenAI, just to do gosh knows what, to start drafting documents and things, is being leveraged quite heavily right now.
And Mark, just to follow up, sorry, and I'll be quick with it, but it's, so as people use it, are there ways to share that information? Like, I'd like to know what AI tools other people find useful and what people are like, maybe not. And maybe some of those numbers would, the more people that are using a specific tool, the more likely that is to be a tool that people find useful. And so do we have any kind of information sharing amongst departments around those kind of tools?
We have a little bit going on, but there is actually discussion. We have our AI policy for generative AI about ready for review from our senior leadership group over the next month. We also have a guideline that gives kind of tips and tricks and some of the technologies that are being leveraged and how to use them safely that we're almost done kind of fine tuning. And there has been a lot of conversation. I think it's a good idea. We're talking about starting a user group or a support group within the county departments to share how AI is being leveraged. We've done this in the data space. We've done it with GIS. That is a great way to get collaborative conversations going between departments that are leveraging the technology. So I expect we would start those groups later this year.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I know you've got a lot of eyes on a lot of different areas, so I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Shadegg McNally.
Thank you. Yeah, that was one of my questions, was about the AI, and so I don't know how we're looking at that policy. That can be off a line question. But I'm looking at that rating, and when you're talking about measures, my assumption is that our cybersecurity attacks have increased over the years. And I don't know if that's something we should look at, or if that's something we should not be sharing, about how many cyber attacks we were able to thwart, or, because I think that would be great for the public to understand that this is a constant daily threat, and how we're able to repel that, protect, and so that's my first question.
Sure, I
Would
can
that
answer
be
that
something?
first.
Yeah.
I think we've generally shied away from putting attacks because at first it felt like to me, we were sort of like creating drama or fear about what's going on. The reality is, yes, we thwart probably millions of attempts to access our system a month that are automated by bots on the internet. And so that's interesting data, but it's also not really that interesting either, because it's so much it becomes almost like noise. I think better metrics could be things like how many active incidents did we actually respond to, where we actually had a credible threat that maybe squeaked through. So there's a lot of the other measure that I think might be worth measuring is we're doing a regular phishing campaign that kind of shows how often people click the phishing emails. And although it's been a little depressing, the numbers lately, it's actually gotten better the last couple phishing campaigns. We were up over 10% click rate at one point last year. And we're back down around 4% now. But that might be a good measure to show how people are staying focused on that. This doesn't go away. You have to keep constantly reminding yourself not to click before you do the things you've been trained to do. So those are some examples of things that may be a little more proactive and less. The data is interesting, I'll give you that, but it's not much I can do with it.
So, and I find that interesting, that a lot of them by bots, so that was another question I had, is a lot of these threats coming from out of the country, local, in the country, I always wonder, is there someone working both sides of the
Yeah.
fence? You know, because that's such a rare, it's such an unusual and important thing, and it's behind this kind of screen of we don't know.
Yeah, we do block certain countries right now to access our systems because there's just no real credible information we've received from departments that we're doing business in certain areas, like Kazakhstan. And so we do actively turn off certain accesses from some countries that are high threat cyber countries. As the globalization of the world happens, that may become a problem at some point. But right now, that's been, I think, the best approach we've been doing with some of those kinds of international type organizations.
Thanks. And then my last question, if I might, when we talk about unique visitors to larimercounty.gov, I'm assuming that you're also tracking where they're going, and I'm curious.
Yeah.
Which site is it for information or actually to perform a service? Like, I'm just curious.
I'd say
about that.
most of our repeat is performing a service. So one of our top ranking sites, for instance, is checking, what's the right word? Inmates at the jail, looking by a name as an example. Some of the other ones are property search type data and tax information from our property search and mapping pages. So that could be another measure we provide, top 10 sites that, or top X sites that our residents are accessing. They do change a bit as the seasons change, but they could be interesting information from the last year. What was the top 5 or 10 pages that were accessed at Larimer County, if that would be an interesting measure.
I was just curious because I also think that kind of might be interesting to track. But thank you. I appreciate it. Fantastic job. I think this is so important the public know how hard you guys work. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So before I offer a couple of thoughts on your question,
Yeah.
did we adequately provide direction regarding the cybersecurity rating issue?
Yes, thank you. That was very helpful.
All right. Then, related to the website, two thoughts there, and I agree with Commissioner Shattuck McNally that it would be good to see where folks are going. For example, I'd be very interested to see how many people are accessing, for example, our community health, wellness, and resiliency data dashboard, or perhaps the behavioral health dashboard. So I think that would be useful information. Related to that, I'm wondering, are we also able to track how many folks use the translation provisions of the website and even the accessibility provisions of the website? And one final question, I think, is it seems like we're now Larimer.gov, but in terms of emails and all of that, it's interchangeable, .org, .gov. Why don't we just get everybody on .gov? Because I'm not sure if that's contributing to any confusion. So there are a couple of questions embedded in all that, Mark, please.
Yes, certainly are. I believe we are tracking the measures on the accessibility, especially the language translation. I know we have percentages of, it's like 98% is the Spanish translation, as an example, and I think the next highest is a Chinese translation, which was kind of interesting.
If it would be helpful to know what percentage of the folks who visit the website might use those.
I think we could provide that, even if it's not on this dashboard. I'd happy to get some measures to the commissioners on that one.
What about the emails?
So the short answer is because it's hard to change.
Because it's hard to change?
Yes, because everything that's registered through the .org domain in all of our systems. We do have a project that we're estimating right now that we hope to do next year, but to change from our primary domain of .org to .gov through our Google infrastructure and all of the registered domain names that we have all of our servers tied to, it turns out it's not very easy. We can have people start leveraging their .gov on their business cards and try to do a campaign to communicate that should be the email address we put towards the public, because we have aliases which are basically that work the same. It redirects it to our .org addresses. And I could talk to Michelle in the commissioner's office about possibly communicating a switch over the next year or so to try to leverage your .gov emails as a primary use email.
Thank you. Just a thought.
Yeah.
So it's 11:30. Lorinda, anything else you'd like to add before we close out?
I think the one piece of work that Mark didn't really talk about that's really critical to the organization is the project management work, this innovation and insight work. Departments are doing incredible things and have amazing ideas that the ITSC talks about on a regular basis. And I think in having a metric around how many of those projects are in flight, what's on the waiting list, that might not be a bad measure, just to demonstrate to the public that we're always looking to move forward and improve what we do.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good point. I think giving some insight into the number of projects and work that we're accomplishing each year would be really informative. My other favorite measure, which is off topic a little bit, was we just completed our email retention project, and we deleted over 12 million old emails out of our
I saw that on
platform.
the, that saved,
I feel so much lighter.
how much gigabyte space? It
it
saved
was-
a bunch of megabyte space.
It was 11,000, I think, or 11 million megabytes or something like that.
Well, and I think in closing, related to what I understood from Lorinda to say, it might also be helpful. I mean, I'm always impressed that we're doing so much of the software updates or developing new programs in-house, for folks to know that. And perhaps, I assume there are cost savings and that might be useful information.
Yeah, I think I could schedule, we have our next work session on support services is with human resources. We're going to talk about a lot of employee trends. How about if we make the one after that, we'll talk about some of these IT, we go a little deeper in some of these project trends and some of that. I think you would find that interesting.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Mark. Julie, anything else before we adjourn? Then at 11:32 a.m., we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Well done, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, Mr. Ken Cooper.